Hello and welcome to episode 38 of the HamCorp training manual. In this episode, we craft some nice new multi-blocks, go through the full Draconic circuit line, and set up the Abyssal harvester automation. Welcome back. It is time to progress some more. There are 3 new multis I have access to right now. Actually, there's a 4th one. I haven't mentioned that, and I don't think it's mentioned in the quests anywhere. Well, it might be mentioned here. Oh, it is. The Insane Rocket Module. More power, but looking at the amount, it's actually not that much. 100 million EU per tick, like it's good. It's not that much. This is for burning rocket fuel. I do need to make ferrocenium superoxide, which is a okay process. It's a couple of chem reactors, it's whatever. It's basically the final upgrade to the MCFs, so I don't know, maybe I'll do that for fun. But I don't think it's gonna make that massive of a difference for me. Anyway, that's not the focus of today. These are the 3 multis I was talking about. The component part hub is basically a component part assembly, but I don't need to do ordered inputs anymore. It also has throughput boosting, so it's basically an upgraded component part assembly. The Abyssal harvester, this has a bit of an automation challenge. I think it's an optional automation challenge, but I will definitely be tackling this. This is the source of end materials, so I can harvest a couple of different materials here in the end. And this is kind of what the drill does in all the other dimensions. So it's just resource generation in the end. There's a couple of new blocks here as well. Starium drill casings, bunch of starium, and mithrolic drill casings, bunch of mithrolic alloy. Also some Draconic casings. These need some Nyanium, some Draconic stuff. This is definitely required for progression. So I am gonna have to craft probably a couple of them, probably 1 per recipe, not sure. And then that opens up a whole processing line for these 3 materials. The processing line is detailed here. It's not terribly long, but it is something that needs to be done for progression. And finally, there's the Draconic circuit assembler, which has 2 uses. It is a bulk low-tier circuit crafter, so I get a whole bunch of circuits. This is a lot faster, or at least a lot more material efficient from the looks of it. I don't think this is that big of a deal, but I will probably make one anyway, just for these. But more importantly, there is Draconic circuit assembly, which is what is needed for Draconic circuits. I can't do these in normal assemblers anymore. I have to make this to make the new tier of circuits. This does have parallel hatches, which is very nice. And it also takes stocking input buses and hatches. So no weird jank P2P stuff going on. In addition to those, I'm gonna make a bunch of sterile maintenance hatches so I can start parallelizing things or machine spamming things without having to also spam sterile clean rooms. And then I can make Draconic circuit boards, which can be turned into Draconic printed circuit boards, which are turned into Draconic processing units. These need Draconic brain matter cells, and I can use them to make Draconic microchip processors. In addition to the printed circuit board, for the Draconic microchip processors, I need a bunch of Draconic QMDs, which have basically been unlocked now. These are pretty easy to make, just a component part assembly recipe, so once I have the component part hub, this should be totally fine. From there, I can make Draconic processors, as well as Draconic processor assemblies, Draconic processor supercomputers, and Draconic processor mainframes. And that is the full Draconic line, the first UIV circuit. We'll take a look at what to do from there once we get there. There's also some stuff I can scale up with the sterile maintenance hatches, like this distillery and this fluid heater. These are absolutely required, and the reason they're in single blocks, if you don't remember, is because the multis have muffler hatches, so they can't go in the clean room. But now, finally, I can scale these up. And I have to, because this is not keeping up. Anyway, component part hub is done, so I can put this down. I want to craft the DCA next. I don't know if I'm going to get to the harvester today. I kind of want to do the circuits first, so I will, and then I think after that maybe I'll look at the harvester. Well, cool, let's swap out my old component part assembly. Yes, singular, I have 1. I AFK a lot for this beautiful piece of work. I also made the DCA, so here's this. There's Draconic processing unit. Now it's time to go up the chain. I don't think there's anything super interesting here. Draconic mainframes in hand, this unlocks a couple of new things. First of all, mega parallel hatches, including the mega absolute parallel mastery hatch, which allows me to run up to 8 recipes in parallel without extra energy consumption. This is going to make a huge difference for fusion, and the normal parallel hatch allows up to 2048 recipes in parallel. That's pretty good. Besides that, I can make the Daydream spire, which I think is the highest tier of Dreamlink node that's currently implemented in the game. So, kind of a big boy. This has a connection radius of 64 blocks around it and can connect to an infinite number of connections. I haven't made any of the Dreamlinks yet, which is a bit bad on my part, but now I can just go straight to the best one, I guess. Anyway, besides that, for progression, the main thing here is Mark IV Fusion Reactor has been unlocked. This is actually surprisingly chill to make. I don't think there's much that's new. I don't think there's anything that's new even. I have to scan an Aux 1, which is fine. The structure is actually smaller than the Aux. It does need advanced fusion coils, which need magmata alloy, mithrolic alloy, sort of expected items at this point, and also Mark IV fusion casings. These need a bunch of UEV things like borealic neutron reflectors, UEV voltage coils. Still, it's not too bad. Draco Breath resilient fusion glass. This needs draconic scale cells and dragon breath. So this, to me, this actually seems like a kind of the most expensive thing, just because dragon breath is not that easy to get. Well, it's easy to get, but it's just, you know, it's slow. I only have about 458 buckets. That's not a lot. And here's my backup bucket. Besides that, of course, I will need voidic metals to progress, so maybe I should actually set up the Abyssal harvester first. I did show this before already, but it's just a bunch of UEV parts. Nothing too special. The scan is a UEV epic gas collector, which I can just, you know, make and scan. And then after that, there's the voidic lines, which we'll get to when I make this. So I'm actually gonna get to crafting these two things, and I'll be back when I have one or both of them. Alright, Abyssal Harvester crafting is complete, but before I put this down, actually, I kind of quickly want to make this Daydream spire, because I've started to have weird, like, throughput issues with the flux storage. It doesn't put all the power into storage, even when it's fully empty. Just something I wanted to do quickly before continuing on with the Abyssal Harvester. I did use the terminal for these floating blocks. There's no way I do those by hand. That's too much of a pain. I've named the network HamNet, and the structure is incomplete because I think it needs a laser target hatch to be done. I did decide to put this underground because these kind of need to go all around the base, and I didn't leave space to put them anywhere, so yeah, underground kind of makes the most sense. Now let me get some laser connections here, and then we'll see how this works. I imagine it's as simple as using Dreamlink energy hatches, putting them on machines, and then hooking them up to HamNet. That's probably it. This does only have a range of 64 blocks. I don't know if there's a way to visualize that. Maybe this loose inducer would be useful. I'm also going to use this because it charges EU and FE powered items in my inventory. While I'm at it, I'm also actually going to make a ultimate battery. This is the highest tier of battery in the game, I believe, and lets me make the UHV Ultimate Capacitor. Enormous energy storage potential, way more than my FluxNet, so I will be making this. And at this point, it's honestly sort of cheap. 16 energy clusters is not that much. which does mean I need to do basically a full rewiring of the entire base to use Dream Links everywhere, but that's probably a good thing, because I can get pretty high amperage hatches here, 256 amps instead of just the mere 16s that I've been using everywhere. I'll probably do that in the background. For now, we can also start on the Abyssal Harvester. That was probably not the most enjoyable time lapse to watch, if I even like decided to keep it in, because it's so dark here. I have to wear this stinky armor and I don't have night vision, so I noticed that there's kind of fourfold symmetry here. So I just built one diagonal, or I guess two diagonals like that, and then I copy pasted it while rotating. So, and then I replaced this layer with glass. So it's actually pretty easy to do by hand. The middle section was kind of harder because I had to keep looking at the EMI preview. So that's actually the hard part, more than the outside. Anyway, I made 5. It's partially in storage, partially in my inventory, but I'm gonna place 5 of them. There are 5 different recipes, and I don't know if I need all of them. Maybe one of them's a recycling one, maybe not, I have no clue. But regardless, they all need to be done in the end, so I'm just going to set them all up over here. Not all of them are going to be hooked up completely, but we'll see what I need as I continue processing things. Alright, all 5 set up. I've also read the automation challenge here, and I'm not totally sure I need to really do this, at least not yet. It would be nice, of course, because it's a free 2x parallel, so I don't know, maybe I'll do it. But one thing I wanted to comment on before even trying is there is a really nice recipe here. This one, the Voidic Saturation Sponge into Echo Fluid. Echo Fluid has been very annoying because I've been making it with the nuclear reactor, which doesn't scale very well, but check this out. The Voidic Saturation Sponge is made from Voidic reinforced meshes, which are made from Void ingots, which ultimately come from Echo Fluid. So, this is an Echo Fluid loop, and it's a really good one. A little bit less than 2.6 buckets of Echo Fluid go in, and 288 buckets of Echo Fluid come out. And this has a really generous minimum and maximum saturation, 10 and 120. 120 is the upper limit, I'll come back to that in a sec. As for getting the whole Voidic process going, that's what the remaining 4 recipes are for. So it starts here with this Dragon Breath recipe. This presumably doesn't need to be done too many times, actually. In fact, I think it kind of maybe only needs to be done once. But once this is done, it makes low saturation, moderate saturation, and high saturation Voidic excretion. These can be processed further in more Abyssal Harvesters to duplicate themselves and also to make some of the other stuff. So high saturation gets turned into more high saturation, quite a bit more, 700 times as much. And I also get some moderate and low saturation out of it. Similar thing with the moderate and low saturation Voidic excretions, I can run it through the Abyssal Harvester and basically just get more. So, in truth, I did not need 5 of these, I only needed 4, but that's okay. This does need Abyssal Saturation cores, so there's the low, the high, and the moderate versions. They're crafted in Draconic Infusion, probably gonna have to level maintain these, and I'm also gonna have to deal with the minimum and maximum saturation here. The way the saturation works is every 5 seconds, the machine gains 0.55% Abyssal saturation. And it goes up to a maximum of 120%. That doesn't make sense, but okay, sure, why not? Running a recipe in the harvester decreases the saturation by 5%. I don't know if that's per recipe or per 5 seconds or something. I guess I'll find out. I would imagine it's just per recipe. So every time a recipe is run, I lose 5% saturation. I also don't know if that scales with parallels, but I imagine it doesn't. If saturation is within a 5% range of some specific values, I get a free 2x parallel. That's the optimization challenge, is I want to try and have saturation in that range at all times, but for right now, I'm not too concerned about it. This already looks very rewarding. 700 times multiplication. I don't feel like I need the extra parallels, but I guess we'll see. As for what I do with these excretions, you guessed it, cyclonic sifting. And that starts the lines, which I will come back to. So first I want to set up the voidic excretions, and then I'll meet you back in the overworld where it's not so dark, and then we'll continue. Yo, I totally forgot I could do this. The Elder Dragon wings, and I can put this on my back. Oh, I could have done the whole time lapse with actual night vision. My bad, guys. Okay, made a quick subnet, and I'm gonna process the very first dragon breath into voidic. The saturation's too high though, so just gonna break and replace this. And this has started working. Cool. Now, while this runs, I'm gonna go configure the other ones to run as well. The only question I have is, I'm now kind of realizing the issue here, I think. So what happens if while a recipe is processing, I go out of the saturation range? I think that's what this sponge is for. So I think I do need to set up automation for this kind of no matter what. And this is just going to be passive echo fluid. So realistically, I didn't need 4 of these, I needed 3. But that's fine. So the logic here is I prioritize the actual production recipes when I'm at the right saturation level. And if I'm too low, I just have to wait. And if I'm too high, I need to do the voidic sponge recipe to bring the saturation down. Okay, that must be the automation challenge, so... this is an interesting problem. I like this one. This is a good one. Man, I am on the funniest side quest right now. To make these sponges, I need synthetic sponge, which needs yellow carpet, which needs yellow wool, which needs yellow dye, which needs dandelions. So I'm making a hydroponic garden for dandelions. What? Okay, I think I have this set up. I'm pretty sure that this works as intended. As you can see, the saturation is going down and I'm gaining echo fluid. That's because I'm doing the sponge recipe right now. And meanwhile on this harvester, the saturation is too low, so nothing's happening. So I'm waiting for the saturation to go up, and once it hits 65, it will start doing recipes. And this one here is now doing the correct recipe. Okay, so I think this works. It's definitely not optimal, especially if when we're saying double parallels here, if this is actually double absolute parallels, then this is definitely not the optimal setup, but this is okay for now. I don't mind this. So the automation here is actually very simple, surprisingly simple. This second variadic interface is actually not used, so let me just hide it away for now. What happens here is I have a redstone variadic interface. I've set the ratio, or I've set the indicator here to be the ratio of a certain amount of abyssal saturation. And this amount is necessarily a number that is within this range. So for the low saturation excretion, the amount is set to 30%. For the medium, it's 60, and for the high, it's 90. This was the high one. So what this means is I get a redstone signal that is proportional to how close to 90% I am in this case, or 30% or 60%. At 90%, I will get a redstone signal of 15. That goes through this comparator with an analog lever set to 14 or 15, one of those, whatever allows it to go through only when it's 15. This, by the way, thanks for telling me about this. I didn't know it existed. This is basically a variable, like a custom set redstone strength, which is exactly what I needed. Anyway, so only when the signal strength is 15 does the signal go through. When the signal goes through, it does two things. It turns this input bus on, which will pull saturation sponges, and it turns this dual stocking input off. And this has the actual recipe that's being done here. Now, this by itself is kind of all you need, because if the saturation gets too high, then we put in some sponges and that brings it down. Doing the sponge recipe is particularly good at reducing saturation because I do the recipes faster. In particular, it's faster than the rate at which saturation goes up. So running that recipe constantly will always be a net negative saturation over time. So yeah, so once I'm over that value, I put in a sponge that brings it below the value, and then things just craft as usual. So this recipe starts happening. And that should be the case for all of these. Yeah, this one's working, this one's working, this one is also working, everything is working. And that's kind of it. There's not much to this automation. I know there's a little bit more optimization I can do, like forcing it to be within that 5% range, but I don't know if I really see the point. Though I will say it looks like it's absolute parallels because this is not at that threshold, right? And this is doing 4 parallels at 0.94 amps of UXV. This one is doing 8 parallels at the same energy, even though the base cost is the same. So I think it is absolute parallels, which is pretty significant and worth optimizing this for, but I can live with this. It's only a 2 times improvement. I can just place another machine, you know? Anyway, that's done, so I can start doing the actual line now, but I think that's going to take too long for this episode, so we'll do that next time. Thank you for watching this episode of the HamCorp Training Manual. In the next episode, we will craft the Mark IV fusion reactor, set up the Voidic lines, and craft some even better plasma turbines, pretty much forcing the switch to true wireless power. See you next time.